one of my points I was going to make about, I mean, this team entirely, but it was very on display in these two games, is that why are we still watching Tata Martino's Mexico play in 2025? So many players here have been around for too long. You already mentioned him. Jorge Sanchez, we should be done and dusted with him. Gallardo, we should be done and dusted with him. There are so many players involved here that do not need to be with this team anymore. Pineda, I'm over him. Luis Romo, I'm over him. Eric Lira, I mean, talk about Eric Lira, a great footballer, good with both feet, able to play the right pass, able to track back on defensive midfielder, able to create, move the ball forward. All things that Lira does not have. We need to move on from him. And you can say the same thing with Romo. We got to move on from all of these players. And I feel like that Colombia game, it showed. It showed. The point I wanted to make overall for this entire window is, I mean, the Ecuador game had plenty positives, I think, way more than this Colombia game. I think this Colombia game really shows how stagnant this team has become. Stagnant.
I think that's harsh. I think it just exposed what needs to be fixed in terms of not having the same players that need. I think it was a wake-up call in the sense of like, all right, there needs to be these new players that are part of the squad or haven't been called up that need to be called up and need to see some rotation. Because like, look, our midfield is shocking. We knew that. Our midfield options are shocking without the youngsters, the under 20 midfielders in Nitson. Obviously, somehow Eric Sanchez had a game of his life against Ecuador for some reason. No idea where that came from, but I mean. Yeah. You can make the argument he helped his case for the World Cup squad. So I'm not gonna complain. If he can play like that every game, I got no complaints. You know what I mean? Right. He did very well in the Ecuador game. I think it's just the lack of being able to adapt. You know what I mean? Like like you said, he should not be playing. Jorge Sanchez should not be playing. And the only problem is it makes Cesar Montes and Vasquez look not horrible. They did decent despite the scoreline, just because they get exposed. You get your left back, right back get beat on a single skill move. You're all of a sudden you're one-on-one, and then you have a guy in the middle of the box just waiting for a tap in. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where it's down to Aguirre to be like, okay, I understand these guys were kind of like was a building block for this team. No, they're not there anymore. Mateo Chavez had a great game against Ecuador, in my opinion, better than Gallardo. So I think he needs to start. I think you got to give these youngsters a chance. Yes, they're not going to have a great game every single time. And I think you got to expect that going into this. But at the same time, they're not going to have a great game every single time. But if you give them the full confidence to be like, all right, I'm going to put you in this situation. It's going to be tough for you, but I believe in you. I'm telling you, they're going to probably rise to the occasion 9 times out of 10. So I think it's one of those things going into this World Cup where I think you got to give some of these players. I know Westcott is going to probably be out for the World Cup, unfortunately, which is tragic for us because we're stuck with Jorge Sanchez. Hopefully, maybe something can change on that right back side. You never know. But the left back, I think Mateo Chavez really needs to be given a solid shout out for Aguirre here going forward.
Yeah. I mean, and I fully agree with you on, we got to give the youngsters a chance here. Like, Vasco needs to give these youngsters a chance. It is really unfortunate that last month and this month has been impacted by the existence of the U20 World Cup. And we're not able to see Mora. We're not able to see Montiel. We're not able to see Hugo. A lot of the players that I wish got the chance here only have so much time to do it, right? But what's sad to me and what should be annoying to a lot of Mexican fans is the fact that we need to rely here on youngsters, on the youth players for this upcoming World Cup. The fact that is the next option, which, yes, at some point it should be, but they should not be the saving grace of a team if you're 18 years old, right?
I mean,
they can be.
I think that's kind of harsh. You look at Spain. I mean, they're relying completely on.
Okay, well, Spain's complete. Lamine Yamal at 17 years old is one of the best players in the world.
I'm well aware, but I feel like it doesn't matter the age. If they're good enough, they're good enough. You know what I mean? Like those players 100%. Balled out in the U20 World Cup. I think it's one of those things where it's like, all right, we understand we don't have the greatest players in those positions. Next man up. Yes, they happen to be young, but at the same time, there's not a downside that these youngsters are now going to be getting called up at 18, 17, 16. And that's our face of the future for the next 10 to 14 years. And now they're getting game time now when they're super young. I don't think they only can get better from there. I don't think that's a downside or that's something to look negative on. I think it's something that's, absolutely. It sucks we don't have a player that's like, world class in the regards of playing in the upper divisions type thing. But I think I'd rather have an 18-year-old starting than fucking Charlie Rodriguez in our midfield. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'd rather you be starting.
I'll put in a shift. Let me tell you. Let me tell you, I'll put in a shift and a half. But I just think like an Eric Lira, like he can't cut it. Maybe on a bench situation he can come on, but I think I'd rather see Thiel in there. So one of the players from the U20 World Cup, because I think a lot of those players made a good case, and I think if you're a Aguirre, you got to be looking at that U20 World Cup and be like, all right, this team needs some rejuvenation. Yes, that was very obvious against Colombia because the speed difference was ridiculous in certain aspects. But I think it's just one of those things where you got to look in that and be like, okay, which players can I call up? And I think you can call up a handful of players, not everyone, obviously. I think you can call at least 4 or 5 players up for this upcoming World Cup, or at least the friendlies, just to give them some game time, see how they do against like the older players. So
yeah. I mean, and I fully agree with you on that. And you're telling me, right? Like I only play youngsters in like FIFA and Full Manager. My issue though is like, yes, let's start them now, and they can only get better. But what's the floor, right? Like if you're starting right now, you want to be successful in this World Cup, right? You're hosting this. You want to go beyond the round of 16. You want to go to levels you haven't seen before. The fact that that's all being reliant on these youth guys now is what worries me. I'm not saying they can't do it. But the fact of the matter is that the fact that we have to rely on them now is a little worrying. Because what if they can't, right? We don't know. It's just a little scary. And the fact that you have to do it now it is what is worrying to me, because Spain, you have Pedri, you have Gavi, you have Lamine Yamal, you have all these younger players, Nico Williams, Kubarsi, all these younger players. But the difference is obviously they're doing it at such a high level in such a top league for such a top team in Barcelona, in Bilbao, things like that. It's obviously a lot different. You can rely on them. And if you don't rely on them, and if they don't work out, you have a next man up in a more experienced Spanish midfielder or attacker, things like that. The depth is there for a team like that. But then if these youngsters from Mexico don't work, given the opportunity, all you have to rely on is Charlie Rodriguez, is Jorge Sanchez. That is what's worrying me here. Sorry, Joaquin, go ahead what you were going to say.
I'm just saying, like, I feel like if they're good enough right now, I mean, put them in the lineup, get them game time, like Andres was saying. I don't see a reason to wait. Like, even if it's the World Cup, a big stage, but still, like, give them a chance to shine.
100%. Again, my issue is that, like, I'm not saying don't give them the opportunity. My issue is you have nothing to fall back on.
There's no fail safe. I get there's no fail safe is what you're saying. I get that. It's just the fact that it's like, look, like you have an inkling feeling, I think kind of a good consensus around, the federation, the fans, that these players are going to show up for these games if you did put them in these situations. And yeah, there is a chance they might not rise to the occasion. And that's okay too. You know what I mean? Like, that's okay. They're still young. Obviously, you can just be like, all right, they're just young. They're inexperienced. They're not ready for it just yet. But there's only one way to find out. And at the same time is like, this midfield is so shocking at the moment, unfortunately. We know Mora can do it. We know he can do it because we've seen it in the Gold Cup in certain glimpses here and there. And I think, this U20 World Cup, he was one of the best players, if not the best player for Mexico. So I think, his confidence is already growing. So he's easily going to probably fit back into this midfield. Edson's going to be in the midfield. I also think right back situation is tough, obviously, but I think Israel Reyes did a really good job against Ecuador. I think he probably should be our right back going forward just for right now. I think he is that better solidified defender because he drops back a bit more. But no, I think it's the fail safe. I don't want to be too cautious. You know what I mean? Yeah, we are hosting the World Cup. I think this is the time where you got to take some gambles and some risk here. I'd rather take some gambles and risk on the youth than, rely on something that should be, I don't even know. Safe, right. Safe in air quotes.
Well, safe to lose.
Safe to lose, but you know what I mean. It's supposed to be the safe option and something what you're expecting. Then us go stumbling out of the tournament because we went for the safe option instead of relying on certain players. I don't know. I'm willing to take that gamble personally. If I was to get it, I'd take this gamble. At least for these games coming forward, these friendlies coming forward, you gotta implement them in the squad now, so at least they're comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I don't mind if they don't start, in this World Cup. I think these friendlies, they have to be involved in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm looking forward towards the November ones. You face Uruguay and Paraguay, 2 big CONMEBOL opponents. I think another thing that this October window told me was that Mexico has fallen so far behind CONMEBOL teams, right? And you had that Ecuador game, fantastic. But this Colombia game, man, like imagine you had to face Colombia in the World Cup right here, and it ended in this way. And I'm not saying it's going to be much different in the World Cup. I don't see that. I'm a little bit worried in that sense. And yes, I am taking the negative stance. I am taking a very pessimistic look at all this. But a 4-0 loss to Colombia, man, like, it's just coming from a perspective. It's just of
trying to stay positive, I think like the first goal was a free kick, poorly defended. You can't have that happen like at all. That's just inexcusable. Beats Santi. Can't beat Santi there, obviously. Second goal, Jorge Sanchez's probably got turned inside, outside, whatever you want to do. Third goal, horrible defending once again. Fourth goal was literally 1-on-1. Malagon probably should have done better defensively. I think they were fine. I don't think Malagon should have came out. There's things that you can work on, coach on. Yeah, I think this is the first game where it was kind of like, all right, we got thumped. You know what I mean? In a long time.
Yeah.
Where we got thumped.
Yeah.
And obviously it was against a very good Colombian opposition that I think when we did the preview for, we were hoping for, I expected a loss, but not a thumping like this in terms of goals. But
right.
I think there's things that you can fix that kind of like excuse what happened, in the sense of like, you can be like, all right, yes, that wasn't good, but there's something to improve on. I think that Ecuador game was a good rebound of fixing certain aspects and kind of dominating the game. Honestly, wasn't a pen in my books, but whatever. Shit happens, you
and Mexico could have had more, if I'm being honest. They maybe should have scored more than one.
And it's concerning that Santi, we talked about the preview too, Santi didn't take that advantage. Let's be real. He didn't take advantage of the opportunity he was given. I forgot his name. What's his name? Why am I blanking? Elijah, the other striker. He scored. Yes. He somehow looked better than Santi. I don't know how that's possible, but I'm sorry. The only way that you can
some players just work with the team.
You can prove yourself is scoring goals, doing your job, and his job is scoring goals, and he can't do it, unfortunately, for us. And at this point, I just want whoever's going to score goals. I honestly couldn't care less who it is. Someone's got to score goals. I think Chino did a great job at right wing. I think he also needs to. I think Chucky also did a great job. I think that right wing position's up for grabs, but I just think that there's some things that need to be tweaked, but it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of positive you can take from Colombia that they improved on, they acknowledged and then worked on for Ecuador. But I don't think in the World Cup we face Colombia, we get 4-0 thumping. I really don't think that's going to happen whatsoever. I think it's going to be a lot closer game. Granted, completely kind of different midfield switch too. Hopefully defenders are switched a little bit. At least we can be a little bit more clinical. I think it's going to be a closer game than a 4-0 thumping. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we, at this state of depending on who's playing, Colombia is going to, thump us or like we're going to win. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than, 4-0 drumming that occurred on Saturday.
Well, I don't fully disagree with you, but this is how I'm going to refute that a little bit. We have said this about Mexico how many times over the past years against CONMEBOL. Their record against CONMEBOL teams, they've won like twice against CONMEBOL teams in like 12 years. And one was with the U23 team against Bolivia. Okay, it's Bolivia. Bolivia can't win unless they're playing at fucking Mount Olympus in Bolivia, right? And the other one was against Paraguay. Paraguay's Paraguay. They have their moments, but so on and so forth. You play against the top teams, you're not doing well. How many times have we talked about Mexico and saying, yeah, it was a bad game, but they're going to improve on it? So many times, right? And yes, honestly, that Colombia game, 4-0 sucks. I can't say 4-0 is the right scoreline. You're right, because I think Mexico did play better in open play against Colombia than the scoreline suggests. But still, this team is not there with it anymore. Were they ever? No. Have they improved upon that point? No. Your point coincides with the fact that this team is still the exact same team from years ago. That team then, we've had this conversation of, okay, well, it wasn't a good performance, but we know what to improve on. The exact same players 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years on are still struggling in the same ways, right? So like that's what tells me, like what is to tell me that we're going to see different Mexico side come the World Cup? You play against Colombia in the World Cup, what's to say you're not going to lose 4-0? Because I haven't seen anything else different, right? Yes, I would believe, home field advantage. It's a different environment. You're more competitive. I haven't seen that yet. I do think Mexico, come the World Cup, will compete more. They will show effort more. I feel like with this Colombia game, they just lost the edge at some point, which you don't want to see. And I don't think it's going to happen in the World Cup, but it's just little things here and there that, yes, you can improve on, but they have not. It's not like this is the first time for these players against Colombia where we're seeing them struggle to perform and they can improve upon it later on. This is how many times have they played CONMEBOL teams now and are obviously not up to par. And can I also add, Mexican media before this game, I don't know if you guys saw this, they were mostly saying that Mexico were on par, if not better than Colombia and Ecuador. And that has never been an occurrence in at least 3 World Cups.
The hype train was going crazy. Let me tell you something.
My God.
The delusion was more than me. I think I was the most grounded I've ever been. I think I was the most grounded I've ever been in that preview. But
that might have been the first time you've ever said that Mexico are probably going to lose in a preview. So I applaud you for that.
I was shocked myself after recording that. But no, I think it's one of those things where I think we said this before, I think, but it's a different era with Aguirre, I think, with taking responsibility and accountability. Though? I feel like it is. I think you also got to look at the players presented. You got to remember, we didn't – Huescas, I guarantee you, starts in front of Jorge Sanchez if he's not injured, obviously. I think that's
100%.
That's a guarantee. So the right side's locked down. I can't explain that. That's a phenomenon that I think that we had that Charlie phenomenon. I think Charlie's gone now. We're okay with that. This Gallardo needs to be studied too. He's got some dirt on somebody. I don't know how. Yeah. But I think Mateo Chavez locks that left side down. I think it's just one of those things where I have faith that there's going to be change. I think this upcoming international window is going to be huge, especially against Paraguay. And why am I blanking on the other team? Uruguay. There we go. It will be huge. I think they're decent oppositions. Obviously not the same caliber as Colombia, obviously. But I think, if we get at least a win out of this next upcoming window, I think it kind of balances the scale.
The scales.
I think the problem is also because Mexico's been on kind of like this hype train of winning. They won the Gold Cup. There's momentum, there's hype, and then now it's kind of like, okay, results aren't going our way. Now it's kind of like, all right, let's panic and then exaggerate. That's the story. Yeah. No, I know. It's just the same thing for the United States though too. You know what I mean? Like the United States, like they've had a tough go, and then all of a sudden now, like they're winning games or beating teams, and then like the hype train's building up. It's just the natural flow of international football because of the amount of breaks. I just think that this upcoming window is going to be extremely important for the boys.
See, the difference between Mexico and the USA here, though, right, is the USA down in the pits. Not even half a year ago, not even a quarter of a year ago, we were talking about how Panama might be a better team than the USA in CONCACAF. They might be a top 4 team, and they're not top 3, right? Mexico has been the pinnacle over the past year or so. They've taken advantage of the USA not being there. But I feel like it's a regression almost, right? USA, on the other hand, they are getting better. It's very notable. It's very obvious. They are getting better. Each window so far under Poch since summer has been an obvious improvement. Mexico, on the other hand, you have the success in CONCACAF, but this has been the story for years now. Mexico can't get it done against international teams. They can't. Yes, the 4-0 loss was bad, but who's this? These are goals that I'm not seeing improvement on. These are goals that you can't give up in the World Cup. And yes, it was a fluke here for some goals, but if you're letting it happen here, what's to say you're not going to let it happen in the World Cup? One goal is the difference maker for every team there. That's my issue, is I'm not seeing enough improvement yet. And I have seen this from, many other Mexican media people online and whatnot, and videos and whatnot. There's just not enough improvement. The USA is improving. There's obvious. Mexico are kind of just trying to hold on to that level. There's no improvement. Will there be a change? Again, it's the same thing. Yes, I have faith there's going to be changes, but what's telling me there is? Because there hasn't been a change in almost 4 years now. You're going to improve the midfield a little bit, which, don't get me wrong, yes. You have Marcelo Ruiz in there, by the way, who I've thought was been somewhat lackluster over the past 2-3 games. Yeah, just for a little bit.
I was kind of shocking. I'm surprised.
Right, again, it's only 2 or 3 games. Course of time, maybe come the World Cup, he's in a much better form for the Mexican national team. I would like to see a little bit more. You bring Edson on, he does a lot for this midfield. Obviously, he's probably the best Mexican player, the most consistent Mexican player. Does he prevent a 4-0 Colombia loss?
No, I don't know. I think you add some fight to it. At least, as the captain, I think you
4-0 with an extra yellow.
4-0 with 2 reds, buddy. Yeah. I don't know. I think U20's kind of the U20 set the tone. Injury. The U20 set the tone. I don't know. With 2 reds in the last 10 minutes against Argentina, yeah. I think the youngsters set the tone for what the senior team needs to do here. You're losing. Set the tone. Get some 2 reds. Elbow guy in the head. I mean, might as well. Shit.
Yeah, but a lot of changes are going to be made. A lot of players improved. I need to see it first. Again, it's one of those things we've done this for 3 years now, right? How many times have we said, well, and this is for the USA as well, by the way, but how many times have we said, oh, they're missing a few key players. Those few key players come in, doesn't mean much against a lot of the best teams, not just in CONCACAF, in CONMEBOL, and around the world too, right? I just need to see more. I really need to see that improvement that's supposed to be brought on by these players. I do think Raul is going to be better in the attack. I do think Edson's going to be better there. Does that mean that all of a sudden Mexico are an equal team to CONMEBOL teams? No. I think there's a lot more issues around this team that shows that they're not at the level that they want to be going to this World Cup.